Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something, well, truly fundamental. The incredible journey of human fetal development.
It really is astonishing.
Yeah, I mean, the sheer speed and complexity. Going from just one fertilized cell to a tiny human in only 9 months, it's like the ultimate biological engineering project.
Absolutely. Precision engineering happening on a microscopic scale.
And the source material we're working from today, it's this really dense academic module, all about genetics and the mechanics of prenatal development. Honestly, it's a bit intimidating.
It can be, yeah. There's a lot of detail packed in there. It's basically a lesson in efficiency.
Right. So our mission for you listening and for us is to break this down. We want to really grasp the three big developmental stages.
Get the sequence right.
Exactly. And understand those vital support systems. The amniotic fluid, the placenta. I mean, the placenta alone is incredible.
A temporary organ doing multiple jobs. It's fascinating.
Then we'll chart the week-by-week milestones. What happens when? And finally, decode that unique circulatory system the fetus uses. The bypass highway, as the outline calls it.
And understanding that fetal circulation is key because it's completely different from ours. But the timing throughout this whole process,
Yeah.
that's the crucial part.
The critical window.
Exactly, the critical window. Knowing when specific structures form is vital because that's when they're most vulnerable. It's not just abstract biology. It's about understanding risk and development in a very real way. This is biological efficiency at its peak.
Okay, then, let's get into it. Let's unpack this three-act play of development, starting right at the beginning. Conception, so 3 phases. Act 1 is the first, and it's super short, right? The pre-embryonic stage, sometimes called the ovum phase.
That's right. It covers conception through day 14, so the first 2 weeks. It's all about rapid cell division and, crucially, movement.
Okay, movement. Where does it start?
It starts with fertilization. And this is interesting. It has to happen in a very specific spot. The ampulla, that's the outer third, sort of the wider part of the fallopian tube.
Not just anywhere in the tube?
Nope. The timing relies on it happening there. If it happens elsewhere, things can go wrong, like an ectopic pregnancy.
Okay, so fertilization happens in the ampulla, creates the zygote, then what?
Then the zygote starts dividing really rapidly. This is called cleavage. You get 2 cells, then 4, then 8, forming a little ball of cells called the morula.
And this ball is moving.
Yes, it's traveling down the fallopian tube towards the uterus. And that journey, that takes about 3 to 4 days. Precision timing again.
3 to 4 days just to get to the uterus.
Exactly. And by the time it arrives, it's changed. It's now called a blastocyst. It's not just a solid ball anymore. It's developed a fluid-filled cavity.
And the blastocyst has different parts already.
Yes. This early differentiation is key. You have the inner cell mass, or ICM. Those are the cells that will actually become the embryo. And then there's the outer layer, the trophoblast.
Trophoblast, that sounds important.
Oh, it's crucial. The trophoblast cells are what will eventually form the placenta and the outer membranes. And it's the trophoblast that actually burrows into the uterine lining, the endometrium. That's implantation.
When does implantation happen?
Usually around day 6 to 10 after conception. So this whole first stage is about fertilization, rapid division, traveling, and then securing a foothold in the uterus, setting the stage.
Okay, so implanted by day 10-ish. That brings us to Act 2. The embryonic stage. You said this one is intense.
Understatement. This runs from day 15, so just after implantation is complete, right through week 8 post-conception. And if there's one period people need to understand in terms of vulnerability, this is it. It is absolutely the most critical time in development.
Why so critical? What's happening here?
Organogenesis, the formation of literally all the major organ systems, the brain, the spinal cord, the heart, the limbs, the gut tube. Everything is being laid down during these few weeks.
Oh, all at once.
Pretty much simultaneously. The cells are differentiating, migrating, folding. It's an incredibly complex ballet. And because everything is forming so rapidly, this is when the embryo is most susceptible to teratogens.
Teratogens. Those are harmful outside influences.
Exactly. Things like certain viruses, alcohol, specific drugs, radiation. If exposure happens during this critical embryonic window, the damage is often structural. You can get major birth defects because the foundational architecture is being disrupted.
That makes sense. The blueprint is being drawn, and you don't want anything messing with the lines.
Precisely. So by the end of this stage, week 8, what have we got?
What does it look like?
Well, it's still tiny. Only about 3 centimeters long, just over an inch, and weighs maybe 2 grams.
That's it, after all that.
Yeah. But crucially, all the major organ systems are present, at least in their basic form. And the main external features are recognizable. because all the foundational work is done, it earns a new title.
Ah, this is when it becomes a fetus.
Exactly. The end of week 8 marks the transition from embryo to fetus.
Which leads us into Act 3, the longest act by far, the fetal stage. This runs from week 9 all the way to the end of pregnancy.
Correct. Week 9 until term, which is typically considered around 38 weeks post-conception or 40 weeks from the last menstrual period.
And what's the theme of this act? If Act 2 is building, what's Act 3?
Refinement and growth. The heavy construction is done. Now it's about maturation. The structures that were laid down need to grow, develop complexity, and start functioning. Organs mature, the systems become more integrated, and the fetus gains a lot of weight, preparing for life outside.
Okay, so for all that building and refining to happen, you need a pretty sophisticated support system right from the start. Let's talk about the early structures, the membranes, and that yolk sac.
Right. As soon as implantation occurs, these protective layers start forming. There are 2 key membranes. The outer one is the chorion.
Chorion, that comes from the trophoblast, right? The layer that implanted.
Exactly. It develops from the trophoblast. It forms these little finger-like projections called chorionic villi, which are crucial for developing the placenta. The chorion essentially becomes the fetal side of the placenta and contains the major umbilical blood vessels. It's the outer boundary.
And inside the chorion.
Inside is the amnion. This is the inner membrane. It forms directly around the embryo, creating the amniotic sac, the bag of waters that holds the amniotic fluid. It's the immediate protective bubble.
Okay, 2 membranes. What about the yolk sac? Doesn't sound very human.
It's an evolutionary leftover, but it's still critical in early human development. It has a couple of really important temporary jobs. First, it provides some early nutrition before the placenta is fully up and running.
Okay, a temporary pantry.
Sort of. But more importantly, during the 2nd and 3rd weeks, it's the main site of blood cell production, hematopoiesis.
So it makes the first blood cells before the bone marrow.
Exactly. Before the liver takes over briefly, and long before the bone marrow matures. The yolk sac is the original blood factory. It keeps things going until the primitive heart starts beating around the end of week 3 and circulation gets established.
And then it just disappears.
Pretty much. As the placenta takes over nutrition and the liver and spleen take over blood cell production, the yolk sac shrinks and gets incorporated into the base of the umbilical cord. It did its job and then got out of the way. Perfect biological timing.
Amazing. Okay, let's dive into that amniotic fluid inside the amnion. It's not just water, is it?
Not at all. It's a really dynamic, carefully regulated environment. It's mostly water, about 98%, but the other 2% contains organic stuff, electrolytes, proteins, carbs, lipids, urea, and even fetal cells that get sloughed off. It's typically clear, maybe slightly yellow, and slightly alkaline.
And the volume changes?
Dramatically. It starts as just a few milliliters, but increases weekly. At term, there's usually somewhere between 700 to 1,000 milliliters, so roughly a liter.
Where does it all come from?
The source actually changes. Very early on, it's mostly fluid diffused across the amnion from the mother's blood plasma, kind of like seepage.
Okay. But later...
Later, the fetus takes over production. Fluid comes from the fetal respiratory tract. The lungs actually secrete fluid, and also the GI tract. But the main contributor, starting around week 11, is fetal urine.
The fetus pees into the fluid.
It does. And it also constantly swallows the fluid. There's this continuous cycle of production and removal, primarily through fetal swallowing, is how the volume is regulated.
Swallowing its own bathwater, which includes urine. Sounds odd, but I guess it's vital.
Absolutely. That swallowing is crucial for developing the fetal gut. It practices the motions, helps mature the intestines, and it's the main way fluid volume is controlled. If the fetus can't swallow properly, maybe due to a blockage, the fluid builds up. That's polyhydramnios.
Too much fluid. And too little.
Oleohydramnios. That can mean there's a problem with fetal kidney function. Maybe they aren't producing enough urine. Both conditions are red flags for potential issues.
Okay, so volume regulation is key. What else does this fluid do? The outline listed 6 functions.
Right, it's a multitasker. First, temperature maintenance.
Right.
It keeps the fetus at a constant, stable body temperature, essential for metabolism.
Makes sense, like a warm bath.
Second, it prevents adherence. It stops the fetus from sticking to the amniotic membrane. This allows for free movement and, critically, symmetrical growth. Imagine if an arm got stuck to the side, it couldn't grow properly.
Are those amniotic bands related to this?
Yes. If the amnion ruptures, strands or bands can sometimes wrap around fetal parts, constricting growth and potentially causing deformities or even amputations. The fluid normally prevents this by keeping everything floating freely.
Okay. Third function.
Barrier to infection. It provides some protection against bacteria sending from the vagina. Not foolproof, but it helps.
Fourth.
cushioning. It protects the fetus and the umbilical cord from bumps and jolts, from external trauma. It distributes any pressure evenly.
Like a natural airbag.
Exactly. Fifth, it allows for that freedom of movement. We mentioned symmetrical growth, but the movement itself is vital for developing the musculoskeletal system. Bones strengthen, joints form properly because the fetus can kick and stretch.
And the last one, number 6.
It acts as a source of oral fluid, as we said, for swallowing practice and gut development. It's also a repository for waste, like urine. And importantly, the movement of fluid in and out of the tiny fetal airways helps with lung development. It stretches the air sacs and brings in growth factors.
So much packed into that fluid. Okay, shifting gears slightly. While all this is happening, the embryo itself is organizing. Let's talk about the blueprints, those 3 primary germ layers.
Ah, yes. This happens very early in the embryonic stage, around week 3. It's called gastrulation. The inner cell mass differentiates into 3 distinct layers: ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. And these 3 layers are the origin of every single tissue and organ in the body.
Everything comes from just 3 layers.
Everything. It's the fundamental body plan.
Okay, let's break them down. Start with the outer layer, ectoderm.
Ectoderm gives rise to the structures that, generally speaking, interface with the outside world. So the epidermis, the outer layer of skin, hair, nails, sweat glands, and critically, the entire nervous system.
The whole nervous system. Brain, spinal cord, nerves.
All of it. Central nervous system, peripheral nervous system.
Yeah.
Also things like the lens of the eye, tooth enamel. It's the outer covering and the communication network.
Got it. Middle layer, mesoderm. What does that form?
Mesoderm is the middle stuff. Think structure, movement, and circulation. It forms muscles, cartilage, bone, and the dermis, the inner layer of skin. So the musculoskeletal system.
Makes sense.
What else? The entire cardiovascular system, heart, blood vessels, blood cells, the spleen, and the excretory and reproductive systems, kidneys, ureters, gonads. It's the body's framework and internal transport systems.
Okay. And the innermost layer, endoderm.
Endoderm forms the linings, primarily the epithelial lining of the entire digestive tract, from the pharynx down to the rectum, and the respiratory tract lining of the trachea, bronchi, and lungs.
So the internal tubes.
Basically, yes. It also gives rise to the liver, the pancreas, the thyroid, parathyroid, and thymus glands, and the lining of the bladder and urethra. It's the lining of the internal organs and associated glands.
Wow. Ectoderm, outer nerves, mesoderm, middle structure transport, endoderm, inner linings. That organization happening so early really underlines why that embryonic stage is so critical.
Absolutely. A glitch in the formation or migration of cells from any of these layers can lead to major structural problems down the line.
All right, let's talk about the absolute powerhouse of pregnancy, the placenta. You called it a temporary organ, which is just wild. It builds itself, does this incredibly complex job, and then it's gone.
It really is remarkable. Its development starts right at implantation with those trophoblast cells invading endometrium.
But it takes time to become fully functional.
Yes, that's key. The basic structure, the foundation with the chorionic villi interacting with the maternal tissue, is laid down by the end of the 3rd week. And you start getting some primitive maternal placental embryonic circulation around day 17.
Day 17, that's incredibly early.
It is, but it's not working at full capacity yet. The placenta isn't considered fully functional, handling all the complex transport and hormone production efficiently, until about week 12. Until then, the embryo relies more heavily on the yolk sac and simple diffusion.
Okay, week 12 for full power. What's it actually made of? It's part fetal, part maternal.
Correct. It has 2 sides. The fetal side is smooth and shiny, covered by the amnion, with the umbilical cord usually inserting in the center. This side develops from the chorion and its villi. The maternal side is rougher, dark red, and develops from a specialized part of the uterine lining called the decidua bassalis.
And it all starts with that trophoblast layer of the blastocyst differentiating.
Exactly. That trophoblast divides into 2 crucial layers. An inner layer called the cytotrophoblast, which consists of distinct cells, and an outer layer, the syncytiotrophoblast.
Syncytio, what's special about that one?
The syncytiotrophoblast is fascinating. It's a continuous, multinucleated mass of cytoplasm like a giant fused cell layer. And it's highly invasive. It produces enzymes that literally digest the maternal endometrial tissue, allowing the blastocyst to burrow in deeply.
So it eats its way in?
In a controlled way, yes. It also erodes the walls of maternal blood vessels, specifically the spiral arteries in the uterus.
Why does it do that?
To establish the unique placental circulation. When those maternal arteries are opened up, maternal blood flows out and fills these large spaces surrounding the chorionic villi. These are called the intervillous spaces.
So the fetal villi are literally bathing in pools of maternal blood.
Essentially, yes. But, and this is critical, the fetal blood inside the capillaries within the villi and the maternal blood in the intervillous space do not normally mix.
How is that possible if they're so close?
There's a barrier, the placental membrane. It's incredibly thin, composed of the syncytiotrophoblasts, a thin layer of connective tissue, and the wall of the fetal capillary. Gases, nutrients, antibodies, waste products, they all have to be actively or passively transported across this membrane.
So it's a selective filter and transport system, not just an open connection.
Precisely. This separation is vital. It prevents the mother's immune system from attacking the fetus, which is genetically foreign, protects against certain infections, and prevents issues if the mother and fetus have incompatible blood types, like Rh factor differences.
Okay, that exchange function is huge, but the placenta does more, right? It's also a hormone factory.
A major endocrine organ, yes.
Yeah.
It pumps out hormones essential for maintaining the pregnancy. The most famous one is HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin.
That's the one pregnancy tests detect.
That's the one. It's detectable in the mother's blood or urine just 8 to 10 days after conception. Its main job early on is to signal the corpus luteum in the ovary to keep producing progesterone, which prevents menstruation and maintains the uterine lining.
And there are others.
Oh yes, a big one is HPL, human placental lactogen, also called HCS, human chorionic somatomammotropin. This hormone basically modifies the mother's metabolism. It increases her resistance to insulin, making more glucose available for the fetus. It also helps mobilize fats for maternal energy and stimulates breast development in preparation for lactation.
So it ensures the fetus gets priority on nutrients and prepares the mother for afterbirth.
Exactly. It's managing the maternal resources for fetal benefit. The placenta also produces large amounts of progesterone and estrogen later in pregnancy, taking over that role from the corpus luteum.
Okay, so it exchanges nutrients and waste, and it makes hormones. It also acts as substitute organs for the fetus.
It does. It functions as the fetal lungs, handling all gas exchange oxygen, diffuses from maternal blood to fetal blood, and carbon dioxide goes the other way. It acts as the fetal kidneys, filtering metabolic wastes like urea from the fetal blood into the maternal circulation, where the mother's kidneys excrete them. It also plays roles in metabolism and transferring maternal antibodies, providing immunity. It's doing the job of multiple organs simultaneously.
Incredible. And connecting this powerhouse to the fetus is the umbilical cord.
The lifeline. It typically forms around the 5th week and grows throughout pregnancy, connecting the fetus usually near the abdomen to the center of the placenta.
And the structure inside is unusual, circulation-wise.
Very unusual and often confusing. A normal umbilical cord contains 3 vessels, 2 arteries and 1 vein.
Okay, 2 arteries, 1 vein. But their function is reversed compared to adult circulation.
Exactly the opposite. The 2 umbilical arteries carry deoxygenated blood and waste products away from the fetus to the placenta for cleanup and reoxygenation. The 1 umbilical vein carries freshly oxygenated, nutrient-rich blood from the placenta back to the fetus.
So the vein carries the good stuff towards the fetus, and the arteries carry the waste away.
Correct. And the umbilical vein is usually larger in diameter than the arteries because it's carrying that vital oxygenated supply.
How are these vessels protected? The cord seems like it could easily get squished or tied in a knot.
It's protected by a special connective tissue called Wharton's jelly. This is a thick, gelatinous substance rich in mucopolysaccharides that surrounds the 3 blood vessels.
What does the jelly do?
It provides cushioning and prevents the cord from kinking or compressing easily. If the vessels got squeezed shut, the oxygen supply to the fetus would be cut off, which would be catastrophic. Wharton's jelly gives the cord enough structure and turgidity to keep the blood flowing even if there's some pressure or twisting.
A natural anti-kink mechanism. Does the cord always attach to the middle of the placenta?
Ideally, yes, that's a central insertion, but sometimes it inserts off to the side near the edge. That's called a battledore placenta, like the old badminton rackets. While often it causes no problems, a peripheral insertion means the vessels are less protected where they enter the placenta and might be more vulnerable to compression or tearing, especially during delivery.
Okay, let's walk through the trimesters now, looking at the key milestones, what's happening week by week. Starting with the first trimester, weeks 3-12, we know this includes the critical embryonic period.
Right, so week 3 is huge gastrulation, forming those 3 germ layers. The neural tube, the precursor to the brain and spinal cord, begins to form.
And week 4 is a big one, right? The heart.
Yes. Week 4, the primitive heart tube folds and starts beating. It begins circulating blood through rudimentary vessels. This is often the first sign of viability you can see on an early ultrasound.
Amazing. What about week 6?
Things get really complex by week 6. Early lungs are beginning to develop. The liver starts taking over red blood cell production from the yolk sac. And remarkably, you can detect primitive brain waves using an EEG.
Brainwaves already.
Electrical activity, yes. It doesn't mean consciousness or anything like that, but it shows neural pathways are forming and differentiating.
And the heart development continues rapidly.
Absolutely. By the end of week 8, the heart is partitioned into 4 chambers, the major valves are forming, and the main blood vessels are laid out. The fundamental structure is essentially complete in just about 5 weeks from when it started beating.
Incredible speed. Moving towards the end of the first trimester, weeks 9-12.
Now we're officially in the fetal stage. The head is still quite large, about half the total fetal size. But you can start to distinguish external genitalia, so gender can often be identified by week 12.
What else is happening?
The kidneys have developed enough to start producing urine, contributing to the amniotic fluid. And somewhere between weeks 10 and 12, the fetal heart tones become strong enough that you can usually hear them with a handheld Doppler device.
That must be a huge moment for parents.
Definitely. Oh, and another thing, the eyelids form and then fuse shut around this time. They'll stay closed for several months to protect the developing eyes.
Okay, first trimester done. Moving into the second trimester, weeks 13-27. What's the focus here?
Growth really takes off, and systems continue to mature. In weeks 13-16, the skeleton, which was mostly cartilage, starts to ossify more extensively, bones harden. You can see them more clearly on ultrasound.
And movement becomes noticeable.
Yes. This is when quickening usually happens, typically between 16 and 20 weeks. That's when the mother starts to feel the fetus moving little flutters at first, then more distinct kicks and rolls.
That must make it feel very real.
It's a major psychological milestone. Also around this time, the fetus develops lanugo. It's very fine, downy hair that covers the entire body. Its exact purpose isn't totally clear. Maybe helps vernix adhere. It usually disappears before birth.
Okay, speaking of vernix, weeks 17-20.
Right, the fetus gets coated in vernix caseosa. This is a thick, white, sort of cheesy substance.
Cheesy, what's it for?
It's made of shed skin cells, lanugo, and secretions from sebaceous glands. It protects the delicate fetal skin from the constant exposure to amniotic fluid, preventing it from getting waterlogged or chapped. It also might help with temperature regulation after birth.
And temperature becomes a focus now.
Yes, because the fetus starts depositing brown fat around this time. This isn't regular storage fat. It's specialized fat tissue packed with mitochondria. After birth, the baby can metabolize brown fat rapidly to generate heat without shivering, crucial for surviving the temperature drop outside the womb.
Okay, then we hit a really critical point. Weeks 21-24, the threshold of viability.
This is all about the lungs. The tiny air sacs, the alveoli, are starting to form. But more importantly, specialized cells in the alveoli begin to produce surfactant.
Surfactant. Why is that so essential?
Surfactant is like a detergent. It coats the inside of the alveoli and reduces surface tension. Without it, the tiny air sacs would collapse completely every time the baby exhales, and it would take immense effort to reinflate them. Breathing would be practically impossible.
So surfactant keeps the air sacs open.
It prevents them from collapsing completely, making breathing much easier. Production really ramps up later, but it starts around now. That's why babies born at 24 weeks have a chance of survival with intensive care, including artificial surfactant and ventilator support. Before this, the lungs simply aren't developed enough.
A huge milestone. What about the later second trimester, weeks 25-28?
Sensory development is advancing. Those fused eyelids open up again. The fetus can blink, and its eyes can perceive light. Hearing is well developed, too. The fetus can definitely react to sounds from outside the womb.
So they can hear voices.
Oh, yes. They can recognize the mother's voice after birth. Fingerprints and footprints are fully formed. Now, unique identifiers are set. And structurally, the fetus usually settles into the position it will maintain for birth, most often vertex, which is head down.
Get ready. Okay, final stretch, the third trimester, weeks 29-40.
This is primarily about growth, maturation, and storing reserves. In weeks 29-32, there's a rapid increase in body fat, not just brown fat, but regular subcutaneous fat, which gives the baby that plump look and helps with insulation.
And the brain.
The central nervous system matures significantly. It gains better control over body functions like temperature regulation and breathing. You see rhythmic breathing movements happening frequently now.
They're practicing breathing.
Yes, they're moving their chest muscles, drawing amniotic fluid in and out of their lungs. It's essential practice for the respiratory muscles, getting them ready for air breathing. The fetus is also actively storing iron, calcium, and phosphorus from the mother's supply during this time.
Stocking up for life outside. What about the final weeks, 33 to term?
It's all about readiness. The lanugo starts to disappear, although some babies are born with patches. The mother transfers large amounts of antibodies across the placenta, giving the baby passive immunity for the first few months of life against diseases the mother is immune to.
A protective starter kit.
Exactly. Lung maturation continues, with surfactant levels usually becoming fully adequate by around 37 weeks, which is considered early term. And weight gain is rapid, maybe half a pound a week in the last month. It's just putting on the finishing touches, maximizing reserves and resilience for birth.
Okay, we've alluded to this, but let's tackle fetal circulation directly. It's completely different because the lungs aren't doing the oxygenation, right? The placenta is.
Precisely. The entire system is designed to get oxygenated blood from the placenta to the most vital organs, especially the brain, as efficiently as possible, while largely bypassing the non-functional lungs and, to some extent, the liver.
How does it do this bypassing?
Through three unique structures, three shunts that are only present during fetal life. These are anatomical shortcuts that redirect blood flow.
Okay, shunt number 1. Let's trace the path of that oxygenated blood coming from the placenta in the umbilical vein.
Right, that bright red, oxygen-rich blood enters the fetus via the umbilical vein.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of going straight through the liver sinusoids like adult blood would, most of it flows through the first shunt, the ductus venosus.
Ductus venosus, what does it connect?
It connects the umbilical vein directly to the inferior vena cava, IVC, the large vein, bringing deoxygenated blood back from the lower body. So this highly oxygenated placental blood bypasses most of the liver circulation and gets dumped straight into the IVC.
So it mixes a bit with deoxygenated blood in the IVC.
It does mix slightly, but it's still the most oxygenated blood in the fetal system at this point. This mixed blood then flows into the right atrium of the heart.
Okay, right atrium. Normally, blood goes from right atrium to right ventricle, then to the lungs, but not here.
Not most of it. Here comes the second shunt, the foramen ovale. This is literally an opening, a hole in the wall between the right atrium and the left atrium.
A hole between the atria.
Yes. And because the fetal lungs are collapsed and filled with fluid, the resistance to blood flow in the pulmonary artery is very high. This makes the pressure on the right side of the heart higher than the pressure on the left side.
Higher pressure on the right pushes the blood where?
It pushes the most oxygenated blood coming up from the IVC directly across the foramen ovale into the left atrium. It takes the path of least resistance.
Sneaky. So it bypasses the right ventricle and the whole pulmonary circuit.
Largely, yes. From the left atrium, this well-oxygenated blood goes to the left ventricle, then out the aorta. And the very first branches off the aorta supply the heart muscle itself and, crucially, the brain via the carotid arteries. Priority delivery.
The brain gets the best blood first. Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But some blood must still go into the right ventricle, right?
Yes, some blood, particularly the less oxygenated blood turning from the upper body via the superior vena cava, does flow into the right ventricle and gets pumped out into the pulmonary artery, heading towards the lungs.
But we need to bypass the lungs. So shunt number 3.
Shunt number 3, the ductus arteriosus. This is a short, wide blood vessel that connects the pulmonary artery directly to the aorta, specifically joining it after the arteries branching off to the brain and arms.
So it connects the pulmonary artery to the descending aorta.
Exactly. Since pulmonary resistance is so high, most of the blood pumped out by the right ventricle takes this shortcut through the ductus arteriosus, bypassing the lungs almost entirely and flowing down the descending aorta to supply the lower body.
And then eventually back to the placenta.
Right. That now relatively deoxygenated blood flows down the aorta into the internal iliac arteries, then into the 2 umbilical arteries, and back to the placenta to pick up more oxygen and get rid of waste. It's a continuous loop optimized for placental oxygenation.
Ductus venosus bypasses liver. Foramen ovale bypasses pulmonary circuit, RL atrium. Ductus arteriosus bypasses pulmonary circuit, PA aorta. It's ingenious. But this whole setup has to change instantly at birth.
Instantly and dramatically. The transition from fetal to neonatal circulation is one of the most abrupt physiological changes we ever experience. It's triggered by 2 main events: clamping the umbilical cord and the baby taking its first breath.
What happens when the cord is clamped?
Clamping the cord stops blood flow from the placenta. This eliminates the low-resistance placental circuit, which causes a sudden, significant increase in the baby's systemic vascular resistance, the resistance in the body's circulation.
Okay, body resistance goes up. What about the first breath?
The first breath is huge. The baby cries, inhales air, and the lungs inflate for the very first time. This inflation dramatically expands the pulmonary vessels.
And that expansion does what to the resistance in the lungs?
It causes pulmonary vascular resistance to plummet. Suddenly, it's much easier for blood to flow into the lungs than it was in utero.
So now blood wants to go to the lungs. How do the shunts close? Let's start with the foramen oval.
With pulmonary resistance dropping, more blood flows from the pulmonary artery into the lungs and returns, via the pulmonary veins, to the left atrium. This increased blood flow raises the pressure in the left atrium. Now, for the first time, left atrial pressure is higher than right atrial pressure.
The pressure reverses.
Exactly. And that higher pressure on the left pushes the flap valve of the foramen oval shut against the atrial septum. It closes the hole. Functionally, it closes almost immediately. Over time, it usually fuses shut permanently, becoming the fossa ovalis.
Okay, foramen oval closed by pressure change. What about the ductus arteriosus?
The ductus arteriosus closes primarily in response to the sudden increase in blood oxygen levels after the first breath, combined with a decrease in circulating prostaglandins, which kept it open in utero. The smooth muscle in its wall constricts powerfully.
So oxygen makes it clamp down.
Mostly, yes. This constriction usually happens functionally within the first 10 to 15 hours after birth, sometimes taking a few days. Eventually, it fibroses and becomes a non-functional ligament, the ligamentum arteriosum.
And the ductus venosus, the liver bypass.
When the umbilical cord is clamped, blood flow through the umbilical vein ceases. Without that flow, the ductus venosus constricts and closes off, usually within minutes to days. It also becomes a fibrous remnant, the ligamentum venosum, within the liver.
Wow. So cord clamp, first breath,
Right.
pressure flip, oxygen surge, and boom. The entire system reroutes from that parallel fetal setup to the series circuit of adult circulation, almost instantly.
It's an incredible, perfectly orchestrated transition. Hashtag outro.
So looking back at this whole 9-month journey, what's the big picture? We've gone from germ layers, the basic architecture, through the embryonic stage where everything is built, to the fetal stage of refinement. We've seen these amazing temporary support systems, the membranes, the fluid, the yolk sac, the shunts.
It really highlights the precision timing and the specialization needed for development inside the womb.
Yeah, it's not just growth. It's incredibly choreographed design and construction, protected by these vital barriers like the amniotic fluid and, of course, the placenta.
And the placenta really stands out, doesn't it? Thinking of it as this temporary multifunctional organ acting as lung, kidney, endocrine gland, all rolled into one. Developed solely for the pregnancy, doing incredibly complex work like that nutrient and gas exchange without mixing blood and then just discarded. It's a marvel of biological engineering.
Absolutely. And thinking about that transition at birth, we focused on the shunts closing, but consider this. The sheer force of the pressure changes needed. The pressure in the heart chambers has to completely flip its dominance from right-sided dominance to left-sided dominance almost instantly with that first breath to force those shunts close and permanently reroute every drop of blood. We talk about the drama of the first breath, but the underlying hemodynamic shift, the raw mechanics of that pressure reversal within a tiny newborn heart, that is the definition of a critical high-stakes transition, something to really think about.